You're standing on a beach at the edge of a world you've never seen, and the only way home is 2,400 miles of open ocean. No coastline to hug, no compass in your palm, no blue dot on a screen telling you where you are, or how far you have left to go. Just the sky above you, the swell moving under the hull, and whatever the old man teaching you managed to pass down before you left the harbor. Get the angle of that swell wrong by a few degrees, hold it wrong for a few hours, and you don't just miss your destination. You sail past it into open water. Nobody is coming to find you out there. Right now, you can pull a device out of your pocket and know your exact location on Earth in about 3 seconds. For more than 99% of the roughly 300,000 years humans have existed, that tool did not exist. No satellites, no paper charts, most places, most of the time. And still people cross deserts, oceans, and ice sheets that could kill an inexperienced traveler within a matter of days. So, how did they get anywhere at all? How did people cross open water, blank desert, and featureless ice with no map and mostly get it right? In 1976, a Micronesian navigator named Mau Piailug guided a reconstructed voyaging canoe called Hikloe from Hawaii to Tahiti. 2,400 miles of open Pacific. No instruments. No charts. Piailug, from the tiny island of Satawal, had learned the craft as a boy, tracking dozens of star paths as they rose on one horizon and set on the other, memorizing the angle of each one the way you memorize a friend's face. He read the direction and rhythm of ocean swells well enough to sense a course change with his eyes closed, just from the way the deck moved under his feet. He held the entire voyage as a moving mental model, constantly updating his position hour by hour, using nothing but feel and memory. Before that trip, some historians assumed the Pacific Islands were settled by accident, canoes blown off course and washed ashore by luck. Piailug's voyage argued the opposite. What you were watching wasn't luck. It was a discipline as exact, in its own way, as a modern flight plan, and he'd been rehearsing it since before he could read. But swells and stars only work if there's water under you. What happens when the land itself refuses to give you a single landmark to hold on to? That same year, a researcher named David Lewis was documenting something just as exact happening on dry ground. A continent away. Studying Aboriginal trackers in the western desert of Central Australia, in research later published in the journal Oceania, Lewis watched people cross hundreds of kilometers of visually repetitive terrain. Dune after dune. Scrub after nearly identical scrub. They never lost their bearing. The knowledge wasn't written down anywhere, because there was nothing to write it on. It was sung. Entire trade routes and water sources were encoded into song cycles, passed down from elder to child verse by verse, each line locked to a landmark, a turn, a distance to walk before the next line took over. Everyone assumes a song is decoration, something layered on top of the real information. The truth is, the song was the information. Skip a verse out on the western desert, and hundreds of kilometers of near-identical land turns unreadable in seconds. That's exactly why these song cycles were treated as sacred, not casual. Losing the words meant losing the way home. Permanently, 2,500 miles north, Inuit hunters faced a harder version of the same problem, a landscape with almost no fixed landmarks at all. White in every direction, where a compass needle spins uselessly this close to the magnetic pole. In 2004, anthropologist Claudio Aporta published a study of trail breaking around Igloo Lake, Nunavut in the journal Tudes/Inuit/Studies. He documented hunters reading sastrugi, wind-carved ridges frozen into the snow, using them like directional grooves cut straight into the land itself. They combined that with animal behavior, tidal timing, and the position of the stars. Later mapping work building on his research traced Inuit trail networks spanning thousands of kilometers across the Arctic. All of it held in memory, none of it on paper. Learning it took years of quiet tutoring beside someone who already knew every ridge by feel. Once it was learned, it was reliable enough to trust with your life during a whiteout that erased the horizon completely, in minutes, without warning. Here's where it gets strange though. You'd assume GPS only made this safer. Later research by Aporta found something closer to the opposite happening in the same region. Hunters who leaned hardest on GPS units, instead of the older wind and star methods, got stranded more often when a battery died in the cold. The device hadn't just replaced the skill, it had let the skill underneath it quietly go soft from disuse, the same way a muscle weakens the moment you stop using it. Which raises the actual question buried under all of this. Why does a skill like that go soft, and what is it built out of in the first place? In 2000, neuroscientist Eleanor Maguire at University College London scanned the brains of 16 licensed London taxi drivers, men who had spent an average of over 14 years memorizing the roughly 25,000 streets inside London, a training process cabbies simply call the knowledge. Their posterior hippocampus, the part of the brain that stores spatial maps, was measurably larger than in people who didn't drive for a living. The longer someone had been driving, the bigger that region grew. Wayfinding wasn't just a skill ancient humans happened to use out of necessity. It physically reshaped the organ they used to build it in the first place. And that organ is still sitting behind your own eyes right now, waiting to be asked to do something. So which one was the real technology? The stars, the songs, the snow ridges, the swells? None of them. Not really. Those were only the inputs. The raw material fed into something older and more useful. The real technology was the human brain's ability to build an internal map out of repetition, story, and sustained attention, and then hand that entire map to someone else before you died. That's the part a phone quietly deletes from the process, not the destination, the muscle underneath it. A screen can tell you exactly where you are without ever once teaching you to notice where you are, and the difference between those two things only shows up the moment the signal drops. Picture that beach again. The canoe pointed out at empty water, 2,400 miles between you and land you cannot yet see. What got Pierre across wasn't a device in his hand. It was decades of attention, carried in his body, handed to him by someone who trusted him enough to let him fail along the way. You still have that same brain. It still grows the way his did, the way any cab driver's does, built for reading a world instead of just receiving directions through one. Somewhere between the songline and the GPS pin, humanity traded a skill for a service, and barely even noticed the exact moment the trade was made.